Welcome to the BookBlast podcast, which showcases the best writing from around the world, not only for adults, but also for young adults and children. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you at this month's Translation Book Club here at Hatchards. We're discussing Clara Reads Proust by Stephane Carlier, translated by Polly McIntosh and published by Gallic Books. Clara she's a hairdresser in a small town in the Saône-et-Loire. Her boss, Madame Habib, has delusions of grandeur with regards to the reputation of her salon. She thinks it's part of a fabulous Dessange chain. But actually, it's a rather nice local salons. So Clara's boyfriend, JB, is handsome and as vapid as a celluloid dressmaker's dummy. Her cat doesn't like being stroked. The clients gossip and fuss. She sees her parents. Time drags by. So obviously there's a bit of a vacuum in her life. And then a trans client leaves behind a copy of Proust in Search of Lost Time, and she puts it in her handbag. Curious, and underlines, and the sentence, "You have a soul in you of rare quality, and artist nature, never let it starve for lack of what it needs," catches her eye. And she becomes engrossed in the book, the prose, the emotions. She suddenly starts seeing things in a rather different way. So, over to you all. Yeah, JB.
Who only reads comics.
Comics,
they
true.
have a few books in.
But I said he was as vapid as a celluloid
comics.
dressmaker's dummy,
Yeah.
you see.
Well, what I liked is that she forgets about it. She takes quite a long time to get back to the book, which somehow has to do with she finds herself in that vacuum we just talked about. And that's when she finds the book again and picks it up.
At one point, she's so engrossed she misses the bus for the first time. So she's really captivated by it. And then he eventually leaves with this other lady. So that's kind of both traumatic but not, because then she gets even more engrossed with Proust. So,
The salon is called
Cindy Coiffure, yeah.
No,
Exactly, it's not Dessange.
no, it's actually, it reminded me of Cindy Crawford.
Well, that's the idea, the dream, yeah. How did Clara reading Proust touch you?
I loved the flow of it. I loved the simplicity of it, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it could be anybody. You know, she was living this very, I suppose for a better word, mundane life. She always caught the bus at the same time, got off at the same walk. Every Sunday she went for lunch with her parents. They did the same walk. You know, it was incredibly samey. But I think the book, Proust finds her when she needs it the most. You know, she picks it up, it gets put in a drawer, and it comes to her when actually she needs it, and it helps her through the breakup with JB, which she actually did want. And then when it actually happened, she wasn't sure whether she did want it or not.
Well, that's one of the human, that, isn't it? Yeah.
And she did, and I think it just shows that you just needed something to change your life. And then she goes back, and I love she goes back 16 years later, and she sees Noel in the same shop, and of which that would have been her had she not have found the book, and it have opened her up to all these possibilities. So it's
Well, there's also that thing about then she's wanting to be a performance artist. And that I love the bit when she's wanting to be a performance artist and she's sort of waiting to do her performance and nobody shows up. And then do they show up and all of that. Is that, of course, that does finally sort of get there.
Because then she meets the other guy. He's obviously a bit sparky. She's quite attractive to him. And he was the one that said to her, well, you've got to go out and you've got to go and grab it. You've got to go and bring it and bring the people to you, of which she does, obviously very successfully. So I think it's that going out and seeing those opportunities and grabbing them and bringing them back in.
Absolutely. Right, there's a whole thing about the cat. Where is it? The cat.
You've got to have a cat.
Yes, there is a cat in here. Well, I do have a cat that nowadays does like being stroked. She used to be not so keen on being stroked. Now I'm just trying to find. There's a rather funny bit about the cat. Here we are. The cat has been radically transformed by JB's departure. He tried to find JB at first, seeming even more away with the fairies than usual. He would go into the bedroom and look around JB's side of the bed as if he'd just landed on Mars, or stare at the hook where JB used to leave his sports bag, unable to understand why there was nothing there. And one evening when Clara got home, she found him on the sofa, which had thus far been reserved for humans, purring, something also hitherto unseen, eyes closed in contentment, tail gently wagging. He had obviously realised that JB wasn't coming back, that it was just him and Clara from now on, and clearly that suited him just fine.
Yes.
So there we are, the cat seems to replace JB, actually. Absolutely.
Do you want to read Proust?
He did actually.
Yes,
Very
definitely.
Good, very interested.
Yeah. Although then I saw that it was 7 volumes, and I thought, oh, but
One
But
every
yes.
decade.
yes.
But you can read, I mean, I've only ever read the first one. I mean, I suppose you get the atmosphere, I thought it's like what now people get immersed in box sets. You get box sets on Netflix, the box set of its time. You get immersed. You see, that's in a way, then you didn't have Netflix a century ago. And you get immersed in this world and the characters. That's what, whether it's actually Proust or before him, people like Dickens or Balzac, very different writers, but they created these extraordinary worlds and characters. And even though some of it's a bit dated, and of course he's writing about the aristocracy, but what I love is the way you suddenly reread. I just reread some of the early pages to remember.
Which one is that?
It's the first one.
Yeah, right.
And suddenly, yes, it's sort of a stream of consciousness,
Yeah.
really, in the French way, because of course Virginia Woolf is famous for that here in English. But it's all, and his observations, and yeah, it does draw you in, actually. But then I was thinking, I wish I had time, actually, to sit and read it. Yeah.
I have actually a question. So earlier in the year we read Annie Ernaux, and I was wondering, are there any links between Proust and Annie Ernaux in the years?
What was your question?
We read the years, and I was wondering, are there
What
any
links?
links between Proust's writing and Annie Ernaux writing? Because the years seem a little bit like
Well, it's observation in your time.
Yeah.
So he's observing a century ago. He's observing a certain milieu and a world and relationships then of a very different milieu. Annie Ernaux is observing her milieu at a certain time today. Other than that, I don't know. No, but he's very there's a very sensory side to his writing, which she is the opposite. She's completely the opposite. So, but I suppose as observers of their time, there is perhaps a connection
It's
there.
sort of observers of the
You know,
zeitgeist, observers of what's behind that,
Yeah.
the appearance of things, what's behind it, what's pushing it.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten that I've always wanted to find it, and I can't. I only read the first half of the second and about half of the last.
Yep.
But somewhere there's a description. He describes meeting somebody for the first time in his very careful, slow way, and he details the facial expressions and physiognomy. And from then on, whenever we meet this person, that's what we see. I
Yeah.
wish I could find it. It's a whole page.
first impact, yeah.
Catches that effect.
A few years ago, I can't remember how it came to Gallimard, but they published Proust pieces which had not been published before,
Oh, okay.
and which were scenes of all the first drafts he did.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so you had all the scenes when he's waiting for his mother to come to say good night to him.
Oh,
He's
dear.
meeting her.
Angoisse.
And that we get 3 different versions of it, and some other very iconic scenes.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting.
So how can you remember how were they? Do you remember how they differed?
What the difference were sometimes the people around his house in whatever it's called now in the country,
Combray.
Combray.
C'est Combray. Ouais.
And he has certain characters who live nearby, so they're not the same. The walks he goes to, he makes a different walk. I mean, obviously he tried various things. You know, he didn't,
And then
didn't
some.
come immediately.
Well, also
Perfect.
there's all this thing with Swan that they don't know the very mondain I seem to have forgotten that, but Swan, who's at all these parties and this sort of high society, and here they are just puddling about at Combray in the countryside, and don't seem to realise that he's got this huge, great life, and then they disapprove of the woman he marries, who of course we later discover who and what, all of that. It's just all the censorship, or ostracism rather. Anyway, how did you feel about reading Clara? Did Clara inspire you?
Well, I suppose I quite appreciate from other people, anyone who's got any sort of context about this kind of book. Is it designed for a particular audience, and does it fit in with something else? But anyway, that's the background question. Well, one thing I liked it. It's the only thing that sort of really left me sceptical at the end was this ending, because it seemed like at the beginning he put a lot of effort into describing this mundane world and with all its sort of limitations and when you were discussing her boyfriend earlier on, one thing I was thinking was that I think one difficulty she had was that all the people around her liked him.
Yeah, because he was so good looking.
Yeah, and
the
so
image thing.
so it was almost like if she sort of divorced him, she was kind of divorcing the people around her because her parents really liked him.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a part of me that was I liked all those descriptions, and then there was a bit of a sort of departure with the trans bus driver. That was kind of out of the ordinary in this seemingly staid society. But then at the end, I just thought this is really. I found the ending very sort of strange. It just seemed like pure kind of escapism to me.
Some fantasy.
What happened at the end? Because I have forgotten.
She becomes this reader. She's going to read Proust publicly. But then she's also meets these clowns sort of come to town, and it's like the circus, and that represents, maybe it's Dickens or something, that represents against this might be hard times actually thinking about it. But you've got some sort of free society that's outside this kind of mundane society, and there are these free thinking, free living individuals who are sort of seemingly and I found it maybe the way I think I particularly found it a bit strange because we seem to be living in this time when everything's being sort of cut and arts things are being defunded, and it just seemed like, I don't know, maybe it's better in France than here, but it seemed massive dose of sort of wishful thinking. I'm sorry to be so cynical.
Kind of feel good.
Feel good. It is feel good, which is quite nice.
In France, it's very usual to have literary festivals and arts festivals where people do that.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that you pick up on that as being a bit fantastical, because and I saw that as being that's French. That we do that.
Well, we have a lot of festivals in England too.
But it's different. I mean, if you look at the difference between, even here you have London Book Fair, which is purely a trade show for the industry, and the book fair in Paris, all the public. And you see there is a very much more public, and there the public come and they mingle with the publishers. So reading, it's true. Maybe that whole thing of reading Proust is quite.
Culture is not a dirty word. You have an extraordinary.
We're like intellectuals.
Television program which is called La Grande Librairie, which has 500,000 viewers. Every week.
500,000. Wow.
500,000.
La Grande Librairie,
yes.
500,000 viewers.
And if you can go, if you are invited, following day, if you perform well, you sell 20,000 copies. See that it doesn't exist in England.
Wasn't there there used to be like a Friday night program in France?
Apostrophe.
Yeah.
That's
he
the same
died.
one.
That's the same.
That's the
it
same
replaced
one,
it.
Okay.
He's been replaced.
Bernard Pivot was replaced by what's it called?
François Bunel, and
François
now you have
Bunel,
another one because the other one retired. But it's the same idea, it started as apostrophe, then it became bouillon de lecture, bouillon culture.
Bouillon culture, c'est ça.
And now it's
La Grande Librairie. Yeah, they keep it going. Yeah.
Same idea behind it.
But it's true, the reading aloud. That is, well, it's because she reads so well to the old lady. There's that whole thing, Madame Renaud. So she starts reading to Madame Renaud, and then that leads into her reading. And I suppose, yes, public readings, you do get public readings in France more. Maybe they read them well, because here you do get them, but people, I'm afraid, doesn't always work here.
In the festivals?
In festivals, yeah. Well, they have
Could be,
actors and
or-
stuff doing it now. Does that answer you?
Well, it's not that. Well, thank you for the context, and I'm okay. I recognise France is sort of different from England, and it's not that I thought, well, this couldn't happen. It just seemed almost like the author. Is it
Is it a
Stephane,
get out? Is it was sort of like a bit of a cheap get out at the end? And
Well, you were
then
a
they
bit
woke
harshly,
up
but-
and it was a dream in the end, you know, that type of thing.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't. Yeah, but also that I just wonder if there's the implication that to change your life, you just have to think differently, and for most people, it's a lot more difficult than that. And say, I mean,
Indeed.
when you're talking to, when it comes to literature, you know, obviously, if you come from a family that's had a literary background, that's a huge advantage. That you're going to understand things a lot more quickly than somebody who's completely had to start from scratch and teach them to, you know, which she's kind of doing. She's sort of teaching herself from scratch, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but it just seemed a little bit. Well, I'm just wishful thinking. I wouldn't say it was a. That's the way it appeared to me.
No, I find it
Yeah.
different, you know, sort of, because to me, you know, sort of, the mundane thing, yes, and Clara not having an educational background, sort of, as she has, you know, sort of, obviously, a very artistic skills, that is hairdressing, but the coincidence, you know, sort of, to actually, this client of Clara forgets or leaves the book behind, and she actually uses the opportunity. To me, that's fascinating, and fascinating that Stephane, you know, sort of, what is Carlier, he actually, you know, certainly, you know, kind of implies a feminist aspect of it, or a feminism, because Clara develops all her skills by herself through working hard. So she wasn't kind of in a dream, and the opportunity came to her because of her reading skills. Then she uses it and progresses from that. I mean, at some point, which I really, you know, sort of found myself saying, when she sort of said, you know, reads a whole paragraph. I mean, one of the difficulties with reading Proust, from my point, it was, first of all, open narrative, and sentences were a whole page. So Clara finds a way to actually break the sentence, to take a breath between, you know, commas and various signals to help her read, and hence actually she improves. So it's really, you know, sort of the whole thing develops. But then, you know, sort of Proust himself was a difficult character. He wasn't an easy fellow,
And his books are not as easy, are they?
not as easy, but he suffers, you know, will suffer from Ehlers Syndrome, which is very debilitating, but not enough for him to go to the army.
How did you all come across the book?
These two lovely ladies and myself are half, actually, aren't we,
Yes.
of a book club.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
we
great.
meet every month online. Emma's in Australia. She's come over from Sydney.
Great.
And with her dad.
Fantastic.
Lovely.
And
Hello,
Nicole lives in London but is from Sydney. So we're kind of from all over. And we are almost a little bit like a breakout group, aren't we? And anyway,
Rebelling in some way.
Yeah.
art.
And,
The other three are,
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
and Emma was over for a few weeks now, and we've been planning it for the last goodness knows how long. That we were going to be in London for the next 2 to 3 days, and we're going to all sorts of amazing things over the next couple of days. And one of the things that I've been wanting to do is to find something like this where we could go and listen to a reading of a book, or you know, just something, and came across this because it was the day that we were here and the timing fitted.
Great.
And it was it 10 days ago? And
Yeah.
I said, right, ladies, I've booked the tickets. We need to read this book.
Oh, I love it.
Need to do your homework.
Do that, well, indeed, and it's quite. We do choose short books.
I know, that was really
Yeah,
good.
you see, that was a good guess because we had a discussion about that.
Which
So you
was,
got the book?
which was brilliant. And I think I just loved it so much.
Yeah.
And it's been really,
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing about the book club, you know, everybody, each month everyone chooses their own book.
Yeah.
And then obviously we meet the next month, we discuss it. And you know, we've been reading this year, certainly alone,
Great.
things that we'd never
Yeah.
have read. All different genres.
And
Lovely.
Do you read
Great.
translations as well?
I've read a couple.
Was it Vietnamese?
Things in this library.
Dong.
What you were looking
Oh,
for is in
yes.
this library. We read that.
I've heard, wait a minute, I've heard that. Yes, there's a couple of books all about libraries.
I've read a couple of Japanese
Japanese,
translations.
yeah.
That one was Korean, the bookshop. When the Coffee Gets Cold, which I didn't
That
read.
is-
That's a huge seller,
I
that
think
one.
that is.
Yes.
What's your thinking
So-
around the Japanese translations? Because I feel that's surging this year.
That's
Like
it, yeah, there are
it's-
fashions.
Yes.
Fashions.
That's
Yeah.
apparently
Korean,
at the moment
Japanese,
the
yeah.
most translated
It's
language.
Japanese, yeah.
But also because of the mangas.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you see, it's all it's inspired, and even Korean because of Squid Games and things. Suddenly,
yeah.
so there's a sort of fashion, or
Yeah.
certain things get picked up more.
Although
And
I
any
don't
book
know
which has
because
a cat in the title.
Oh really? At the moment,
No,
cats are
really?
big. Really?
Do you know that's
Which are the
fascinating?
cats?
Yeah.
Or a cat on the image on the
Or
front.
the image.
I'm just wondering though with translations that it might be something lost in translation because when we ran the what was that High and
Hannah Mungdong
bookshop or something,
bookshop.
there was some bits in it which I thought, am I not getting this? And maybe it was just me. We actually talked about it at book club.
We
you know,
did.
that maybe some of the things didn't really directly translate as easily. So I don't know about translations. We don't often read translations, but there's a certain musicality to some languages. And
Yes,
there's
no, there
certain
is, no.
words.
You are supposed to. It
You
is
know.
supposed to. A translation in a new language is like a new book.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is it doesn't read like a translation.
Yeah.
There's not weird stuff.
The idea is
Yeah.
Or even the
it's like your
context,
language.
it reads like it was written in that language, so to speak. So it's as long as the meaning and the rhythm and the voice is there,
Yeah.
but you don't do it word for word. But of course, it is true that different cultures there are oddities. So sometimes you can read translations and you think, oh, that's interesting, but then you realise perhaps there's a cultural difference. But that is one thing. But if there were things that you didn't feel felt right, maybe there was something odd that didn't
Yeah,
work.
and the editor didn't
Or the editor
work.
didn't pick it up, well, that's something else. Because editing translations is a whole thing, and you do need to make sure that it flows.
Yeah.
So even, of course, because I think a lot of people also do read translations, because it's also almost like that famous thing of when you travel around your room, you travel through literature. So you know that's also the appeal is that you're not just reading great, but another thriller, or you're reading something different, which gives you different perceptions or
There's a
challenges
cultural,
you.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be. It doesn't jar. It
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
jar. And actually, we were talking about the characters. I love actually the portrayal of the various characters who come in out of the salon. Very different, of course, to Proust. But this is a charming, very local France. I love it. Les petites histoires, the sort of little. I don't know.
Yeah,
I found
provincial town
the regional town, and it's very touching.
Just on the subject of the town, is
Yeah.
is the real town called Chalon-sur-Mer?
Chalon-sur-Saône.
So is that
It's not that small, but it's
It
but
is
it's a
local.
provincial
It's a
town.
provincial. It's a regional
Because
town.
I must admit, I've never been there, so I didn't
It
know.
would be
I was
like,
trying
it's
to.
not like Birmingham, it's more like
It's not a dead end sort of place. It's
Oh no.
It's
No.
like a.
Oh, it's got a
okay.
thriving
Um,
local life. No, it's not
it's
just
not
tourists
like
or
York.
Okay.
St Albans, yeah, York, yeah. So it's quite a lively little local town with a lively
Right.
life, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It makes me wonder about obviously the people that we see or the people we see every day. They come in, you know, the lady from the bar, she comes in
Yeah.
and every day, and you know the customers they see every day. But the person that came in and bought the book and left it she'd never seen before. It
Well, that
was
happens
very
too,
unusual.
yeah.
So I just wonder what
Well,
the meaning of that is, you know, among the sort of the mundanity of everything, and then this one person coming in out of the blue, leaving this book that eventually has that massive knock-on effect. That
Okay, I mean, doesn't that sort of imply that? So even in this town, there's a sort of effectively there's like different societies because this woman has been outside this literary society. So and that's why I found it a little bit strange. That she seemed to be able to so easily not just. It's one thing to sort of say, oh, you know, I'm going to read all these books. I mean, in Jude the Obscure, Hardy describes this guy. He's
oh my goodness, that's a huge.
He's reading at night to try and sort of cross this barrier, and he can't. It's very difficult for him to do that because of his
background,
his situation.
Terrible.
Yeah,
his class. That's a real attack
the
on
limitations
class.
of his. We're not living in Victorian society, but nonetheless, it's a. And Hardy's very pessimistic, and to come back to your earlier question, I read the book for this occasion, so
thank you.
So it wasn't maybe like I hadn't found it myself, so maybe you were more in sympathy with it, because I don't want to sound too negative, because I really did like it, and it was very well written, I thought, and very interesting, all these characters, but I did there was just a little part of it that just didn't sort of ring true to me. So.
Are you glad you read it?
No, yeah. I mean, I think it's.
Would you recommend it?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Proust carries a bit of an elite image, and what's so nice in this is that it's approachable to anyone.
Exactly.
And I think what we're hearing also is that in England, not Ireland or Scotland, I don't think, the Celts, but in England there is a curious suspicion of the literature and the writers.
The translation as well, yeah.
To be a slight suspicion of the philosophical or and that is for a certain kind of educated person, versus it can be for anybody. And there is, as Georgia was describing, in France you can be buying your croissant, suddenly you're in a conversation about Nietzsche or
Yeah.
In the Middle East too, you're buying a rug and suddenly you sit down and you're talking about philosophers. And so
but this at the moment, it's interesting you raise the subject, because at the Frankfurt Book Fair, this big book fair, which just happened, a French publisher was selling a book which is a sort of new version of Sophie's World, if you remember Sophie's World. It was teaching philosophy to a child. So it has been sold, I think, since Frankfurt in 14 countries.
Wow.
But not in the English language.
Yes.
Well, the English are famously.
En français, Alice in Wonderland is called Alice au Pays des Merveilles, so it's called Alice au Pays des Idées, which means Alice in the country of ideas, instead of in the country of wonders.
That's a question about, what you were saying just now about the people being suspicious of foreign ideas. I mean, the thing is, there's also I would just call it anti-intellectualism. I mean, like there was a book written in the 50s by a guy called Richard Hofstadter, 60s. It's called Anti-Intellectualism in American Life. He was talking about the kind of conspiratorial. I won't mention any names about the current election, but he was talking about the conspiratorial right. And I mean, there's definitely. I'd say there's a strong tradition in England or in Britain of a sort of, as a philosophical outlook. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we're practical people. We don't get involved in these highfalutin ideas.
Actually, yes, that's
very
true.
Strong.
They used to say that about Tom Stoppard.
Right.
Tom Stoppard, who is a great playwright, they always, he's too clever by half. So the minute you're a bit too clever, everyone gets suspicious. That's true. That's true. There is a suspicion.
So my question
bit
is,
too clever.
as we were discussing a French book, and obviously this guy Stephane,
Carlier,
he's obviously interested in. Because I was thinking, does he worry that nobody's reading Proust anymore? So.
He's writing that because it is seen as. Why is he still relevant now? And he's very much so. So I've got my little list of why one feels that Proust is absolutely readable now, even if some of it might be rather like amazing sort of stuck in aspect, but some of it is, and why it's timeless. That's the thing. It's a timeless classic. A classic is timeless. So what you were saying, yes, he does. Perhaps it is also why read. I mean, he's obviously read Proust,
is not known
but
as a super literary author.
He's not.
He's for the.
He's not hugely literary. He's not complicated. He's not wildly complicated like some people experiment.
Interesting because it's Proust. Last year there was a fabulous book called Proust Roman Familial. It has been bought in English.
No, but Laure Murat is completely different. That's biography. Her family were part of the whole Proustian world. And she's quite rebellious, so she dissects the codes of behaviour. There's a whole thing, the scene when she tells her mother that she's gay, etc., and the mother is like an ice block, but you just don't show to show emotions. That milieu is verboten, I mean, that's a very extraordinary book. It's a whole different thing.
She teaches at LA University.
In LA, and you in UCLA, UCLA,
It's a fabulous book. She has gone back to all her family because her family on her father's side is
Murat.
Napoleonic, so recent nobility, let's say, and her mother comes from ancient aristocracy.
Goodness
So
me.
There's all that noblesse de robe and noblesse d'épée and all that. There's a whole thing in France.
The whole family, actually, she names all the members of the family which appear in Proust. And it's
amazing.
so interesting, so amusing, because by then she's been living for 25 years in California and sees the things completely differently. But she's still a princess. So when she comes to some place where she has to, official for her passport or something, or whatever, and the guy on the other side at his desk, princess. Anyway, so this mixture.
What is this book, sorry?
Alors, it's called
Proust.
Roman familial, family novel.
Family novel.
It's in English, is it?
It's going to be.
Going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Emma's going to make a note.
Right, we're making a note.
But just to finish with the Murat book, I mean, that is amazing because she also dissects the whole world. But I know within that world, I mean, after all, the aristocracy, frankly, doesn't count for much in France anymore, but they all do still run around like they do matter. Anyway. Why read Proust, actually? That is a question. Why is one interested in reading somebody who writes so amazingly well, perhaps, but he does. But why read him still? Because other people have followed on.
A couple of the sentences
So
of
what do you
notes,
think?
I underlined them in my book, but I don't have it.
Yeah.
We're just really, you reread them multiple times and thought, oh, that description is beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's really captured something.
He's a beautiful
And
writer,
that's-
exactly.
It
gets inside.
translates through centuries, doesn't it? It translates through
Yes.
generations and through years, and it really, it's.
And you said he gets inside, you said.
He gets inside,
Yes.
which is what Virginia Woolf liked so much about him. He had quite an influence on the way she was trying to get inside. And the voice inside, your voice inside, my voice inside, at the same time as hearing those on the outside. Amazing to do that.
Yes. With Proust, he actually, every single character in his book is bisexual. Or,
Really?
or homosexual, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's actually,
Was he bisexual or homosexual?
No, Proust was homosexual.
He was homosexual. It wasn't exactly broadcast.
Yeah, right.
She didn't broadcast that
Well,
kind of
he
thing.
actually-
In one of the books which was republished, I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember what it was called, it was a story of homosexuality
Oh,
but
really?
between two women. I mean,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Between two women. So there's a slight
but
metaphorical.
it was
very
for
obviously.
him
Okay.
a metaphor.
Yeah,
But
metaphor.
he
yeah,
was
okay.
accused, he was, accused that he's homosexual. He actually challenged the
Oh, did you? I
accuser
didn't know
to
that.
duel.
Really.
And both of them survived, because Proust was denied, and obviously in those days
Well, it was illegal.
It was
It's
illegal.
illegal, yeah.
You were put
But
into
I
prison.
mean, also, the film, Monsieur Swan, in love, and here you see Alain Delon, playing the character. I loved Alain Delon, so don't actually,
Oh, no, well,
But he was most amazing, and he turns, towards the end, he prefers the boys rather than so, and it's really.
So is this why the Proust copy was given to her by the trans person to also kind of represent
Yes.
a non-traditional
Perhaps,
approach
yeah.
to gender
Good
or
point.
sexuality?
Yeah, there's a contradiction. Yeah. We'll wrap up now because the hour's up. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's amazing.